The Imperial Council chamber floated above a burning blue star, a ring of metal and glass wrapped around controlled fire. Light from the star spilled upward through the transparent floor, painting the chamber in slow-moving waves of blue and white. Hundreds of seats curved around the center, each occupied by rulers, admirals, and ministers of the Empire. This was the heart of power. This was where worlds were decided. The session was supposed to be routine. A new expansion route. 3 minor systems to be absorbed. No resistance expected. Then the doors opened. They did not slide. They slammed. Every conversation stopped. A single figure stumbled into the chamber, dragging one leg, armor scorched black and cracked. The envoy's breathing was loud, uneven, echoing through the vast hall. One of his eyes was gone, replaced by a raw, burned socket. The other was wide with terror. Guards moved to intercept him, weapons raised. "Wait," the High Chancellor said calmly. "Let him speak." The envoy dropped to his knees at the center of the chamber. Blood pooled beneath him, drifting upward in thin red threads due to the artificial gravity. His voice shook when he spoke. "Do not go to Earth." A ripple of confusion spread through the council. "Say that again," an admiral said, amused. The envoy lifted his head. His remaining eye locked on the council members. "It is a trap." Laughter broke out. Quiet at first, then louder. "Earth. Sol 3. A backwater death world on the edge of mapped space." The High Archivist flicked through holographic records with a bored motion. "Humans," she said. "Fragmented. Unstable. Technologically uneven. No unified empire. No meaningful off-world presence." Another counselor leaned back in his seat. "Weren't they wiped out during one of the old border wars?" "No confirmed extinction," the archivist replied. "But no expansion either. They vanished from relevance." The envoy slammed his damaged hand against the floor. "They did not vanish," he said. "They withdrew." The laughter faded. The High Chancellor raised one brow. "Explain." The envoy swallowed. "My fleet was assigned to Sector Greywatch. Long-range patrol. We detected debris. War debris. Imperial alloy. Fresh." The Admiral frowned. "Greywatch is empty space." "It was," the envoy said, until ships started disappearing. A hologram flickered to life above his palm. Broken images filled the air. Sensor logs. Emergency signals. Then nothing, just static. 7 patrol fleets, the envoy continued. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Gone. No explosion. No wreckage. No survivors. Silence pressed down on the chamber. The envoy's voice dropped lower. Every last disappearance occurred on approach vectors pointing to Sol. The word hung in the air. "Earth. That's impossible," an admiral snapped. "Our sensors would." "See nothing," the envoy interrupted. "Because that's what there is. Nothing. No signals. No chatter. No traffic. A living system that does not speak." The High Chancellor leaned forward slightly. "Are you suggesting a primitive world silenced itself?" "I am suggesting," the envoy said slowly, "that silence was the point." He triggered another projection. Ancient satellites appeared, rusted, scarred, but active. Human-made. Old. Very old. Their power readings did not match their age. The moon followed, outlined in scan data that refused to resolve cleanly. Hollow sections, the envoy said. Hidden mass. Structures that do not appear unless you look directly, and even then, they fade. Murmurs rippled through the council. "An illusion," someone said. "A sensor error," another added. The envoy laughed weakly. "That's what we said." He looked down at his missing leg. Then the first ship vanished. The chamber darkened slightly as the projection replayed the moment. One moment a destroyer floated in formation. The next, empty space. No flash. No shockwave. Just absence. The envoy's voice cracked. No alarm. No weapon signature. It was as if the universe forgot the ship had ever been there. The High Chancellor stood. "Enough," he said. "This council does not govern on fear." The envoy raised his head again. "This is not fear. This is an experience." The High Chancellor turned to the council. "Earth has been ignored for centuries. If humans possessed this level of power, the galaxy would know." "That is the mistake," the envoy said. "They made sure you wouldn't." Security drones drifted closer. The High Chancellor's tone hardened. "What is it you want?" The envoy met his gaze. "To warn you." A pause. Then the High Chancellor gestured calmly. "The Empire does not hide from shadows. If Earth is a myth, we will expose it. If it is a threat, we will end it. The vote was fast, nearly unanimous. A demonstration fleet would be sent, not an invasion. Just enough force to remind a forgotten species where it stood. The envoy screamed as the guards dragged him away. You were warned, he shouted. They want you to come. That's the trap. They are watching. The doors sealed. Moments later, in a vast shipyard beyond the star, the Imperial fleet assembled. Battleships, carriers, command vessels gleaming with confidence and power. Admirals watched from the bridge as hyperspace engines charged. Coordinates locked. Destination, Sol system. As the fleet tore open space and vanished into faster-than-light, no one noticed one small detail. Every long-range sensor buoy, watching the Sol approach, blinked out at the exact same moment. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply silent. And somewhere, far beyond Imperial space, something ancient stirred and began counting down. The Imperial demonstration fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. For a single heartbeat, space twisted like stretched glass. Then reality snapped back into place. Stars steadied. Engines cooled. Navigational grids realigned. The Sol system lay ahead. At first glance, it looked ordinary. A yellow star burned calmly at the center, warm and stable. Inner planets traced predictable orbits. The third planet, Earth, glowed blue and green, wrapped in white cloud systems. City lights glittered faintly on the night side. No fleets, no weapons fire, no alarms. Admiral Corthan stood on the command bridge of the flagship Imperial Resolve, his posture relaxed, arms clasped behind his back. Scan results? He asked. Clean, a sensor officer replied. No active defense grids. No powered stations. No orbital platforms larger than outdated satellites. A few officers exchanged amused glances. So this is the trap, one of them muttered. Soft laughter rippled across the bridge. Corthan allowed himself a thin smile. Maintain a standard approach. No weapons hot. Let the historians watch this one. Across the fleet, tension bled away. Crews unclenched. Commanders leaned back into their chairs. Earth did not look like a predator. It looked like a prize. As the fleet advanced deeper into the system, more data streamed in. Thousands of objects orbited the planet. Old satellites, broken stations, debris fields from centuries of human industry. All of it obsolete, the archivist officer reported. Primitive designs. Chemical-era construction. Some are over 400 cycles old. Still powered? Corthan asked. Yes, Admiral. Weak signals. Solar and nuclear. Inefficient, but persistent. That alone is impressive, someone said. Most species abandon that junk. Corthan nodded. Humans were stubborn. Records always say that. The fleet slowed as it crossed the orbit of the outer gas giant. Formation tightened. Drones deployed, sweeping ahead in wide arcs. Then one drone stopped responding. Drone 7 is offline, the sensor officer said. No explosion detected. No signal loss spike. Replace it, Corthan replied casually. Another drone slid into the empty space. 3 seconds later, it vanished too. The bridge quieted. Run diagnostics, Corthan said, his voice still even. The officer's mandibles twitched. No interference detected. No gravity anomaly. No energy spike. A third drone was launched. This one carried enhanced telemetry, quantum linked directly to the flagship. Its camera feed showed empty space. Stars. The faint curve of Earth in the distance. Then the feed cut. Not too static. To nothing. The display simply removed itself. As if the drone had never existed. Silence crept across the bridge. Admiral, the navigation officer said carefully, long-range sensors are behaving strangely. Define strangely. They're not failing, the officer replied. They're returning perfect readings. Too perfect. No background noise. No random radiation. No stellar interference. Corthan frowned for the first time. That's not possible. No, Admiral, the officer agreed. Space is never quiet. A communications officer leaned forward. We're detecting passive reflections from the moon, but the mass readings don't line up. Density spikes. Hollow regions. The moon. Corthan turned his gaze toward the pale sphere hanging near Earth. Magnify. The image sharpened. Craters. Shadows. A familiar, lifeless rock. And yet, run a phase scan, Corthan ordered. The scan pulsed. The moon flickered. For a fraction of a second, its surface glitched, lines appearing where no lines should exist. Angles too sharp, curves are too smooth. Then it returned to normal. Several officers inhaled sharply. Sensor illusion, someone said quickly. Probably atmospheric reflection from Earth. There is no atmosphere on the moon, another officer replied. Before Corthan could speak, a proximity alarm chimed. Soft, confused, uncertain. Admiral, the tactical officer said, one of our destroyers is missing. Corthan turned slowly. Missing? Yes. Destroyer Vigilant Claw. It was holding a position on our left flank. The tactical display was updated. A perfect gap sat where the ship had been. No debris, the officer added. No explosion. No distress signal. The bridge went completely silent. Corthan's jaw tightened. Time since loss. 8 seconds, Admiral. Raise fleet-wide alert, Corthan said. Weapons to ready state. Shields full. Across the fleet, systems powered up. Energy signatures spiked. The calm confidence from moments earlier evaporated. Open a system-wide broadcast, Corthan ordered. What message, Admiral? The comm officer asked. Corthan stared at Earth. This is the Imperial Expansion Fleet, he said evenly. We are entering this system under lawful authority. Identify yourselves. The message echoed across space. There was no reply. Seconds passed. Then every screen on the bridge blinked. Not hijacked. Not overridden. A single news signal appeared. Clean, centered, impossible to trace. Audio only. A calm, human voice spoke. You crossed the boundary. The bridge erupted in shouts. Trace it. Source unknown. No translation delay. Language matched automatically. Corthan raised a hand. Silence returned. Who is speaking? He demanded. The ones you were told about, the voice replied. The ones you decided were irrelevant. Corthan straightened. This system is now under Imperial jurisdiction. A pause. Then the voice answered, softer. No. The tactical display flashed. Another ship vanished. Then another. Not explosions. No impacts. They were being removed. Plucked out of reality with surgical precision. Return fire, a commander shouted. Imperial weapons discharged. Beams, missiles, kinetic rounds, tearing through empty space. They struck nothing. The human voice returned. Do not fire again. Corthan's eyes burned. You are attacking an Imperial fleet. That is an act of war. Yes, the voice said simply. It is. The stars around the fleet shifted. Not moved. Rearranged. Invisible forces pulled at hulls. Gravity vectors twisted. Formations broke apart as if gently pushed by unseen hands. Navigation is compromised, the officer yelled. We're being separated. Regain formation. Corthan ordered. We can't, Admiral. Space itself is. Another ship disappeared. Corthan felt something cold settle in his chest. This isn't an ambush, he realized aloud. It's containment. The human voice spoke again, closer now, as if standing just behind him. You were warned not to come, it said. That warning was not for your safety. Corthan swallowed. Then why give it at all? There was a pause long enough to feel intentional. Because we needed to know, the voice answered, who you were. The tactical map was updated one final time. Earth remained still, silent, untouched. But the space around the fleet was no longer empty. Shapes began to appear, faint at first, then clearer. Massive structures unfolding from darkness. Asteroids opening like shells. Dead satellites waking from centuries of sleep. Weapons came online. Not pointed at Earth. Pointed at them. The human voice delivered one last line before cutting the channel. Welcome to the trap. And the fleet understood, far too late, that Earth had never been undefended. It had been waiting. The first human weapon did not look like a weapon. It did not glow. It did not fire. It did not announce itself in any way the Empire understood. It simply changed the rules. Across the Imperial fleet, inertial alarms screamed as gravity vectors flipped without warning. Decks became walls. Walls became ceilings. Crew were thrown against restraints that activated a second too late. Some ships spun slowly, helplessly, as if caught in the tide of an invisible ocean. Stabilize. Admiral Corthan roared. We're trying, the navigation officer shouted back. Our reference points are gone. The stars are wrong. Corthan looked at the forward display. The stars had not vanished. They had rearranged. Constellations no longer matched any known chart. Familiar stellar patterns were stretched, compressed, folded in ways that made no physical sense. It was as if space itself had been rewritten locally, obeying a different set of laws. Local space-time manipulation, the science officer whispered. On a scale that shouldn't be possible. Another ship vanished. Not from the flank this time. From the center of the formation. The flagship Imperial Resolve shuddered as empty space rushed to fill the gap where a carrier had been moments before. No explosion, the tactical reporter reported. No energy spike. It's like they're being archived. Corthan clenched his claws. Archived? I don't have a better word, Admiral. The human voice returned, no longer distant. It was layered now, carrying depth, as if more than one speaker occupied the same signal. You are experiencing Phase 1. Phase 1 of what? Corthan demanded. Evaluation. The fleet's main display shifted on its own. Not hijacked, invited. A three-dimensional grid expanded outward, showing the Sol system in precise detail. Every planet, every orbit, every moon, then more. Hidden objects faded into view. Thousands of them. Asteroids that were not asteroids. Debris fields that were not debris. Satellites older than the Empire itself, quietly repositioning after centuries of stillness. They were always there, the science officer breathed. We just couldn't see them. Yes, the human voice agreed. That was intentional. Corthan's communications officer slammed a control panel. We can't jam the signal. We can't trace it. It's not using subspace or hyperspace. Then how is it speaking to us? Corthan asked. By listening first, the voice replied. The flagship lurched violently. Artificial gravity failed for a full second before snapping back. Several officers did not get up. Admiral, Tactical shouted. Multiple energy builds detected, non-weapon signatures. They're locking onto our drives. Corthan's eyes widened. Intercept. Imperial countermeasures fired automatically. Bursts of interference, gravity pulses, defensive flares. They passed through the incoming fields like smoke through wire. One by one, Imperial ships lost propulsion. Not destroyed. Disabled. Engines went dark. Power cores throttled down against their will. Control systems froze, locked behind commands no Imperial code recognized. This is impossible, a commander whispered. They're inside our systems. No, the human voice corrected. We are around them. The grid on the display zoomed out. The Sol system was no longer the focus. Something else was. A vast, faintly glowing lattice surrounded the entire fleet, extending millions of kilometers in every direction. Interlocking geometric patterns folded through space, intersecting at angles that made the eyes ache to follow. A containment field, the science officer said in awe and terror. System scale. No, larger than that. Star scale. Corthan felt the weight of it settle into his bones. How long? He asked quietly. How long has this been here? The voice paused. Since before your empire learned how to burn its first world. A new image appeared. Earth's history. Not the crude, partial records the empire possessed, but everything. Cities are rising. Wars fought. Satellites launched. Ships built in orbit, then dismantled. Fleets assembled, then turned inward, disappearing into the dark between stars. You left, Corthan said slowly. On purpose. Yes. Why? Because we learned, the voice replied, and for the first time, there was something beneath the calm. Not anger. Weariness. We learn what happens when young species rush outward before they understand themselves. Another Imperial ship vanished. This time, the crew screamed over open comms before the signal cut. Corthan slammed his fist into the rail. Stop this. We came in peace. The human voice answered immediately. No, you didn't. The display replayed the council vote. The laughter. The dismissal of the warning. The word demonstration highlighted in cold, precise text. You came to make an example, the voice continued. So did every empire before you. A second voice joined the first, different tone, same calm. Some came with banners. A third voice layered in. Some came with fleets 10 times your size. A fourth. All of them believed Earth was weak. The containment lattice pulsed once. Every Imperial ship froze completely. No motion, no drift. Even internal systems paused, held in perfect suspension. Corthan could still breathe, still thinking, but he could not move. This is not an execution, the voices said together. If it were, you would already be gone. The stars dimmed. A massive structure emerged from the darkness beyond Neptune's orbit. Not a ship. A station. No, a framework. Ringed segments unfolded, each larger than a city, rotating into alignment. Energy flowed between them in slow, deliberate arcs. Planetary defense. Corthan asked hoarsely. Negative, one voice replied. This protects nothing. Then what is it for? To decide, another voice said, whether something deserves protection. The lattice tightened slightly. Pain flared across the fleet as artificial gravity systems strained. Hulls groaned. Bulkheads warped. Then, release. Movement returned. Corthan gasped, clutching the rail. You're testing us, he said. Yes. Based on what? The voices paused. Behavior, they answered. Reaction. Choice. Another Imperial commander broke in over open comms, panic bleeding through discipline. Admiral, we can't win this. We need to retreat. Corthan opened his mouth to agree. Before he could speak, the human voice cut in. You may attempt to leave. Hope surged across the bridge. Navigation screens flickered back to life. Hyperspace calculations appeared. Imperfect, unstable, but usable. They're letting us go, someone whispered. Corthan hesitated. Admiral, the tactical officer urged, we have to take it. Corthan looked at Earth. Still silent. Still untouched. What happens, he asked the voice carefully, if we stay? There was no immediate answer. Then, softly. Then you move to Phase 2. Corthan felt the weight of the decision pressed down on him. Behind him, the fleet waited. Ahead of him, Earth watched. And somewhere deep within the lattice, systems older than empires adjusted their parameters. The trap was not closing. It was waiting for a choice. Admiral Corthan made the choice the Empire had always made. Hold position, he ordered. The words hung on the bridge, heavy and final. A few officers stared at him in disbelief. Others lowered their eyes, already understanding. Retreat would be recorded as weakness. Staying meant control, dominance, proof. The Empire did not turn away from challenges. The navigation officer swallowed. Admiral, hyperspace windows are degrading. We won't get another chance. Corthan did not look at him. His eyes remained fixed on Earth, small and bright against the black. We stay, he said again. Open all channels. The human voices returned at once, no surprise in their tone. Only acknowledgement. Choice registered, they said. Phase 2 begins. The containment lattice shifted. Not tighter, deeper. Space folded inward, not crushing the fleet, but isolating it. The stars beyond the lattice dimmed until they were nothing more than distant points of light, unreachable and irrelevant. The Sol system became a closed room. The massive structure beyond Neptune completed its unfolding. Segments locked together with slow, deliberate precision. Energy flowed through it in measured pulses, like a heartbeat. The science officer stared at the readings, trembling. That's not a station, he whispered. It's a recorder. A what? Corthan asked. A historical engine. It's mapping us. Every signal, every reaction, every decision. The human voice answered him directly. This phase is observation. The main display changed again. The lattice faded into the background, replaced by imagery that was unmistakably human in origin. Old footage. Grainy. Imperfect. Cities of steel and glass. Launch pads roaring with fire. Early spacecraft clawing their way into orbit on columns of flame. Primitive, one Imperial officer muttered. The footage continued. Those same cities are burning. Skies choked with smoke. Nuclear flashes blooming like false suns. Billions of lives erased in seconds. The bridge went silent. This is your past? Corthan asked quietly. Yes, the voice replied. One of many. The images shifted. Humans rebuilding. Faster this time. Smarter. Ships larger than before, assembled in orbit. Fleets forming. Leaving Earth together. Your records say we never expanded. The voice continued. That was partially correct. The footage darkened. Alien ships appeared. Sleek. Advanced. Imperial in design, though older, cruder versions. They fired without warning. Human ships burned. Cities burned again, this time from orbit. Corthan felt something cold settle in his chest. That was us, he said. An ancestor of your empire, the voice replied. A banner you no longer recognize. A name erased by time. But the behavior was identical. The footage paused on an image of Earth, scarred, wounded, but still alive. We learned something then. The voices said, now fewer, more focused. Expansion invites predators. Silence invites curiosity. But patience reveals intent. The scene changed. Human fleets did not advance outward anymore. They withdrew. Ships vanished into deep space, not toward other stars, but into places between them. Regions where sensors failed, where physics bent slightly out of alignment. We erased ourselves, the voice continued. Not because we were weak, because the galaxy was not ready. Corthan clenched his fists. So this is revenge. No, the voice said immediately. Revenge is emotional. Inefficient. Then what is this? The image shifted again. A massive, shadowed shape appeared beyond the edge of the mapped galaxy. Something vast. Wrong. Not made of matter in any familiar sense. Imperial sensors on the bridge screamed, as if reacting to the image itself. What is that? Someone shouted. The human voice dropped lower. That is why we stayed. The image showed human fleets engaging the thing. Ships vanished. Entire formations erased. But the creature recoiled. Contained. Pushed back. We lost millions, the voice continued. Worlds. Colonies you never knew existed. We fought so you wouldn't have to. The image faded. Silence returned to the bridge. You're lying, Corthan said, but his voice lacked conviction. If we were, the voice replied, you would already be dead. The tactical officer interrupted, panic creeping into his tone. Admiral, more ships are being isolated. Not destroyed. Segmented. The fleet display showed it clearly now. Imperial vessels were being separated into controlled clusters, each surrounded by localized fields. They're dividing us, the officer said. Like specimens. Corthan exhaled slowly. No. Like variables. The human voice acknowledged him. Correct. A new presence entered the channel. Not a voice this time, but a visual. A figure appeared on the central display. Humans. Not armored. Not imposing. Just a person, seated in a simple environment. Dark hair streaked with gray. Eyes tired but sharp. This is an interface, the voice explained. A projection. For clarity. The human looked directly at Corthan. My name doesn't matter, she said calmly. But my role does. I am a custodian. Corthan straightened. You command this? She shook her head. No. I maintain it. Then who commands it? The custodian met his gaze. No one. That's the point. She gestured, and the fleet display shifted again. Records appeared. Species names. Empires. Dates. Each marked with outcomes. Collapsed. Contained. Corrected. Erased. Corthan felt his breath hitch. Those were galactic powers. Yes, the custodian said. All of them believed they were the final answer. She leaned forward slightly. Tell me, Admiral, why did you come to Earth? Corthan opened his mouth. To expand. To demonstrate power. To remind the galaxy who ruled it. None of the answers sounded acceptable anymore. We came because we could, he said finally. The custodian nodded once. That's the answer we expected. Around the fleet, human structures continued to wake. Not weapons, systems. Observation arrays. Memory engines. Probability frameworks. You are not on trial, the custodian said. Not yet. Then what is Phase 2? Corthan asked. She did not answer immediately. Instead, the image shifted to the Imperial capital. The council chamber. The laughter. The dismissal of the warning. Live feed. They're watching us, the communications officer whispered. The entire empire. It's broadcasting. The custodian's voice softened. Phase 2 is transparency. Corthan's eyes widened. You're exposing us. Yes. Why? Because empires fall fastest when they are seen clearly, she replied. The lattice pulsed again. Not with force. With intent. Phase 3, the custodian continued. Depends on what your empire does next. Corthan felt the weight of the galaxy settle on his shoulders. Far away, beyond the lattice, unseen by Imperial eyes, human fleets began to move. Not toward Sol. Toward every Imperial border at once. Earth remained silent. But the trap was no longer centered on a single system. It was spreading. The first reports reached the Imperial capital as whispers. Trade lanes flickered. Border relays hesitated, then went dark for fractions of a second before returning. Not failures. Interruptions so precise they felt deliberate. Merchant convoys arrived early or late by minutes that could not be explained by navigation drift. Patrol fleets reported seeing shadows at the edge of sensor range, then nothing at all. At first, no one connected the events. They never did. On the bridge of the Imperial Resolve, Admiral Corthin watched the live feed from the Capitol in silence. The council chamber looked smaller now, less certain. The same seats, the same banners, but the laughter was gone. The custodian remained on the central display, hands folded calmly. "Your empire is beginning to notice us," she said. Corthin did not look away from the feed. "They will panic." "Yes," she replied. "That is one possible outcome." "And the others?" "They will deny," she said. "They will argue. They will accuse their rivals." Empires waste most of their time pretending problems are temporary. On the tactical display, the Imperial fleet remained frozen in controlled clusters. No damage, no destruction, just perfect restraint. "You could have ended us," Corthin said quietly. "At any moment." The custodian nodded. "Ending things is easy. Ending patterns is hard." As if summoned by her words, a new alert chimed. "Admiral," the communications officer said slowly, "we're receiving priority transmissions. Multiple sectors." Corthin turned. "From whom?" The officer hesitated. "Everyone." Screens across the bridge filled with overlapping signals. Governors, admirals, intelligence directors, border commanders. Panic bled through disciplined voices. "Unidentified forces detected near our outer systems. Our sensors are being overridden without intrusion. Entire fleets are reporting loss of strategic initiative." Corthin closed his eyes briefly. "They're already there," he said. "Yes," the custodian replied. "They always were." The display shifted. Human fleets appeared, not emerging from hyperspace, not tearing open reality with force, but unfolding, as if they had been compressed into invisibility and simply allowed themselves to be seen. They were everywhere, not concentrated, not aggressive, positioned, near shipyards, along trade choke points, around communications hubs, always just far enough away to avoid provocation, always close enough to be undeniable. "They're not attacking," Corthin observed. "No," the custodian agreed. "They're reminding me." The human fleets were unlike Imperial armadas. No uniform hull shapes, no rigid formations. Ships of different eras, sizes, and philosophies moved together in quiet coordination. Some looked ancient, scarred, repaired countless times. Others were sleek, almost unfinished, like concepts made real only when needed. "They're not all military," the science officer whispered, studying the data. "Some of these ships, their infrastructure, logistics, fabrication." "Yes," the custodian said. "War is not what we prepare for. War is what happens when preparation fails." In the imperial capital, the council was no longer seated. They were standing, shouting, arguing over one another as new reports flooded in. "This is an invasion," one counselor screamed. "No shots fired," another replied. "No demands issued." "That makes it worse." The feed zoomed in on the High Chancellor's face. He looked older than he had hours earlier. "Where is the demonstration fleet?" he demanded. No one answered. Corthin felt the weight of that silence. "They're asking about us," he said. "Yes," the custodian replied. "You are now educational." The Imperial public feed activated without warning. Across thousands of worlds, citizens saw the same thing at the same time. Earth, not the planet itself, but its history. Human voices narrated calmly, without accusation, without anger. Records were shown, conflicts documented, warnings ignored, cycles repeated, empires rising, empires expanding, empires collapsing under their own certainty. "And now," the custodian said softly, "your empire joins the lesson." On the bridge, a junior officer whispered, "They're humiliating us." Corthin shook his head. "No, they're exposing us." The tactical officer straightened. "Admiral, we're detecting a buildup near the core worlds. Imperial fleets mobilizing." Corthin closed his eyes. "Of course they are. Fear always chose force." The custodian watched him carefully. "Do you know what happens next?" Corthin opened his eyes. "You stop them." "No," she said. "They decide." The first Imperial fleet to fire did so near a border system rich in resources. Human ships were present, but inactive. An Imperial cruiser launched a warning salvo. The shot struck nothing. Human vessels did not evade. They did not retaliate. They were absorbed. Energy vanished into their hulls as if swallowed. Kinetic rounds slowed, then fell harmlessly away, caught by invisible fields. The firing ship's weapons powered down without command. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Imperial fleets tried to assert control. They found none. Human countermeasures were gentle. Engines stalled. Communications rerouted. Navigation corrupted just enough to force retreat. No ship was destroyed. No crew was killed. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. "They're refusing to escalate," Corthan said. "Yes," the custodian replied. "Escalation gives permission." The Imperial Council issued a declaration. They accused humanity of manipulation, of subversion, of tyranny hidden behind restraint. The custodian allowed the broadcast to finish. Then she responded, not with threats, with numbers, casualty projections, resource depletion curves, probability models showing the outcome of open war. The conclusion was unavoidable. Humanity would win. Not quickly, not cleanly, but completely. And afterward, one counselor demanded through the broadcast, "What then? Do you rule us?" The custodian shook her head. "No." "Then what do you want?" She paused. "To stop spending lives preventing disasters you keep creating." The transmission ended. On the Imperial Resolve, alarms chimed again. But this time, they were different. "Admiral," the science officer said, awe creeping into his voice, "human fleets are withdrawing." Corthan frowned. "Retreating?" "Not exactly. They're repositioning outward." The display showed it clearly now. Human ships were leaving Imperial space, but not toward Earth. They were moving toward the edges of the galaxy, toward the dark, toward the thing the custodian had shown him before. "You're leaving us," Corthan said slowly. The custodian met his gaze. "No, we're trusting you." "With what?" he asked. "With the aftermath." She stood from her seat, the projection shifting slightly. "We have contained your aggression. Expose your patterns. Neutralize your advantage. What happens next is not for us to decide." "And if we rebuild?" Corthan asked. "If we try again?" The custodian's expression softened, not kindly, but honestly. "Then you will not be warned." The lattice around the fleet began to dissolve. Gravity normalized. Stars returned to their proper places. Systems unlocked, one by one. Freedom returned. The Imperial fleet remained where it was, intact, ashamed, alive. Earth did not speak again. Human fleets vanished as quietly as they had appeared. Across the galaxy, borders redrew themselves without violence. Systems declared independence. Others sought cooperation. The Empire did not fall in fire. It fractured under truth. On the bridge, Corthan stood alone, staring at the empty space where the lattice had been. The trap had never been a weapon. It had been a mirror. And for the first time in its history, the Empire was forced to look at itself, without illusions. The Empire did not collapse in a single moment. It cracked. Hairline fractures spread through its structure, quiet, almost invisible at first. Systems that had relied on imperial authority hesitated. Governors delayed orders. Admirals requested clarification instead of acting on instinct. Trade guilds rerouted shipments without permission, citing uncertain conditions. For an empire built on momentum, hesitation was lethal. Admiral Corthan watched it happen from a temporary command station near Seoul. His fleet held in orbit not by force now, but by choice. The Imperial Resolve floated silently, engines idle, weapons powered down. No human ships surrounded them. That was somehow worse. "They're gone," a junior officer said, still sounding surprised every time. "All human contacts have withdrawn beyond sensor range." Corthan nodded slowly. "No, they've returned to where they were." The officer frowned. "Where's that, sir?" "Everywhere," Corthan replied. Reports continued to arrive from across Imperial space. Core worlds declared emergency sessions. Outer systems refused tax shipments. Border regions signed mutual defense pacts, without the Empire's involvement. "They're reorganizing," the political liaison said. "Without us." Corthan exhaled. "We taught them how." The custodian had not contacted him again. No warnings. No instructions. Just silence. That silence weighed heavier than any threat. In the Imperial capital, the High Chancellor stood before a fractured council. The seats were empty. Some representatives had left their posts entirely. Others argued openly, no longer afraid of consequences. "This is humanity's doing," one counselor shouted. "They humiliated us, undermined our authority." "They didn't fire a single shot," another replied. "They showed us exactly who we are." The argument dissolved into chaos. For the first time in generations, no one spoke of conquest. They spoke of survival. Military analysts projected outcomes. Without expansion, resource strain would increase. Without unquestioned authority, revolts would spread. The Empire could still fight, but victory would cost everything. And worse, the galaxy had seen the truth. Across neutral systems, recordings of Earth's broadcasts circulated freely. Not propaganda, documentation. Calm, precise, undeniable. You see, one independent governor said in a public address. They didn't conquer us. They protected us from ourselves. Not everyone agreed. In a far-off sector, an Imperial hardliner fleet regrouped. Admirals furious at restraint, humiliated by inaction. They're bluffing, one commander insisted. No species with that kind of power hides forever. They'll fracture. We strike now. Prove the Empire still has teeth. Weapons were armed. Engines charged. The fleet moved. They did not reach hyperspace. Not because they were stopped. Because space refused them. Navigation systems failed simultaneously. Hyperspace coordinates collapsed into impossible equations. Gravity wells appeared where none should exist. Not crushing, just blocking. A human voice spoke over open comms. Not the custodian. Another. Older. Tired. This was not one of the outcomes we hoped for. The fleet froze. Human ships appeared, not in force, but in presence. Just enough to be unmistakable. You were trusted, the voice continued. You chose differently. The Imperial commander shouted in rage. You don't rule us. No, the voice replied. But we do guard the edge. A single projection filled every screen. The dark shape beyond the galaxy. Closer now. Closer than before. It stirs when you fight each other, the voice said. Every war feeds it. Every empire that burns accelerates it. The commander faltered. You're lying. The voice did not argue. It showed evidence. Records older than the empire. Species erased not by war, but by something that followed war. Patterns no one had connected because no one had lived long enough to see them. This is why we stayed, the voice said. This is why we hide. The fleet stood down. Not in fear. In understanding. Elsewhere, the empire fractured further, but not violently. Worlds declared autonomy. Systems formed councils. Trade networks realigned. Old enemies negotiated instead of clashing. The empire's borders shrank. Its fleets returned home. Not defeated. Changed. Admiral Corthan submitted his resignation 3 days later. Not demanded. Chosen. He transmitted a final message to the Imperial Council. We were not conquered, he said calmly. We were spared. If we try to reclaim what we lost through force, we will lose everything, including the galaxy itself. Some listened. Some did not. But none could pretend ignorance anymore. On Earth, nothing changed. Cities lived. Children grew. The sky remained blue. Humanity did not announce itself. Did not take seats in councils. Did not demand tribute. They returned to watching. And beyond the galaxy's edge, ancient sensors tracked the dark shape's movement. It slowed. Just slightly. Enough. In the quiet that followed, the galaxy learned something new. Power did not always announce itself. Victory did not always burn. And the most dangerous species was not the one that conquered the stars, but the one that chose, again and again, to hold them together. The trap had closed. Not around fleets, but around the future. And this time it held. Years passed. Not the kind measured in celebrations or victories, but the quiet kind, measured in reports not filed, wars not fought, fleets that never launched. The galaxy learned to breathe again, slowly, uncertainly, as if afraid that sudden movement might wake something watching from the dark. The empire still existed, but it was no longer inevitable. Its banners flew over fewer worlds. Its fleets traveled shorter routes. Its authority was questioned openly now, not whispered about behind closed doors. The word expansion vanished from official doctrine, replaced by phrases like stability and containment. For an empire built on motion, stillness felt like decay. Admiral Corthan, no longer Admiral, just Corthan, stood on a quiet observation platform above a neutral trade world. Below him, ships from a dozen species docked side by side without escorts. No warships loomed overhead. No Imperial inspectors waited to count tariffs. It felt wrong. It also felt lighter. Still watching the lanes? A voice asked behind him. Corthan turned. A human stood a few steps back. Not in uniform. Not armed. Just a person wearing plain clothing, eyes alert but calm. You don't announce yourselves? Corthan said. The human smiled faintly. You learn why. Corthan studied with him. Are you a custodian? No, the human replied. I'm a relay. For what? For conversations that don't need an audience. Corthan folded his hands behind his back. Then say what you came to say. The human stepped closer to the viewport, looking down at the traffic below. The galaxy is changing faster than we expected, he said. Not because of us. Because of you. Corthan let out a dry laugh. We lost half our influence. You lost half your fear. The human corrected. Those aren't the same thing. Corthan said nothing. The problem, the human continued, is that fear doesn't disappear. It migrates. As if summoned by the words, Corthan's comm unit chimed. An emergency channel. From the rim. Corthan accepted the transmission. A border governor appeared on the display, eyes wide, voice tight. We have an incident. Deep space sensor arrays detected coordinated movement beyond the old Imperial exclusion line. Corthan's chest tightened. What kind of movement? The governor hesitated. The kind your allies warned us about. The human did not react outwardly, but something changed behind his eyes. How many arrays confirmed? He asked. All of them, the governor replied. And the pattern matches archive projections. The transmission ended. Silence filled the platform. It's earlier than expected, the human said quietly. Corthan turned to him. You said it fed on war. Yes. We've reduced war. Yes. Then why? Because restraint is not the same as resolution, the human replied. You stopped fighting each other. You didn't stop preparing. Corthan felt the truth of it sink in. Border skirmishes had vanished, but fleets were still built. Weapons still tested. Doctrines still written, just renamed. Fear had learned new disguises. The human tapped the viewport lightly. We held the edge for a long time. Longer than we should have. And now? Corthan asked. And now the galaxy has to help. Corthan's eyes narrowed. You're asking us to fight it. No, the human said. We're asking you to choose not to feed it. That's not the same thing. It's harder, the human agreed. Across the galaxy, emergency councils formed. Not imperial, not human-led. Shared, nervous, honest. For the first time, species that had once hidden behind empires spoke directly to one another. They compared data, cross-checked ancient myths against modern sensors. Patterns emerged that none could deny. Every major galactic catastrophe followed the same sequence. Expansion, conflict, silence, and then disappearance. The thing beyond the edge did not attack thriving civilizations. It followed collapsing ones. Human records filled the gaps no one else could. Not heroic tales. Not warnings shouted from thrones. Logs, casualty counts, strategic failures. The cost of choosing dominance over patience. Some leaders rejected it outright. This is manipulation, they claimed. A human myth to control us. Those voices grew quieter when independent probes were launched, probes that never returned, but sent back one final burst of data before vanishing. The dark shape was closer now. Not rushing. Drifting. Waiting. Corthan was summoned to a new council chamber, smaller than the imperial one, humbler. No banners. No raised seats. Just a circle. A human seat remained empty. They're not joining us, one delegate said bitterly. They never did, another replied. They just made sure we could. The debate was fierce. Some demanded a united military response. Others argued for isolation. A few, trembling, suggested surrender, if such a thing was even possible. Corthan listened. When it was his turn to speak, the chamber fell quiet. We spent centuries believing strength was something you showed, he said. Then humanity showed us strength is something you restrain. Murmurs rippled. We can build the biggest fleet in history, Corthan continued. It will feed that thing. We can hide behind borders and hope it passes us by. It won't. So what do you suggest? Someone demanded. Corthan took a breath. We starve it. Silence. End expansion, he said. Not temporarily. Permanently. Freeze borders. Share resources. Resolve disputes before they turn kinetic. Not because humanity demands it, but because the alternative is extinction. That's idealism, a delegate scoffed. Corthan met his gaze. So was the Empire. The chamber erupted into argument. Above it all, unseen by most, human observation arrays adjusted their focus, not inward, not outward, but between. Measuring probabilities. Watching decisions ripple outward. The custodian observed from a quiet station far from Sol, eyes fixed on shifting models. They're close, an aide said. Yes, she replied. closer than ever. And if they fail? She did not answer immediately. If they fail, she said at last, then the trap was never meant for fleets or empires. The aide swallowed. Then what was it for? The custodian looked toward the galaxy's edge, where darkness pressed gently but persistently, to see if the galaxy could grow up. The dark shape moved again. Not faster, not slower, just enough to remind everyone it was still there. And for the first time in a very long time, the galaxy understood something terrifying and hopeful all at once. Humanity was not its shield. Humanity was its test. And the final result had not yet been decided. The decision took longer than anyone expected. Not because the answer was unclear, but because accepting it meant abandoning everything the galaxy had been built on. Borders. Pride. The idea that growth meant taking, not sharing. That safety came from dominance instead of balance. The dark shape beyond the rim did not rush them. It never had. That was the most frightening part. Corthan stood again in the quiet council chamber, older now, thinner, the sharp edges of command worn smooth by time. Around him sat delegates from dozens of species. Some had once been enemies. Some had once been subjects. None of that mattered anymore. What you are asking for, a trade matron said slowly, will end entire industries. Yes, Corthan replied. It will collapse fleets, shipyards, doctrines older than our civilizations. Yes. A military delegate leaned forward. And if we do nothing? If we delay? Corthan did not hesitate. Then we feed it until there is nothing left to feed on but us. Silence followed. Across the chamber, a single empty seat remained. Humans. Always empty. They still won't join us, someone muttered. They already did, Corthan said. By stepping back. The vote began. Not a show of force. Not a dramatic declaration. Just quiet acknowledgments, one by one. Agreements signed with shaking hands. Concessions made that would have been unthinkable years earlier. Expansion freezes. Demilitarized borders. Shared resource corridors. Mandatory arbitration before conflict. It was not peace. It was discipline. As the final vote passed, emergency sensors flared across the chamber displays. The dark shape moved. For the first time, it did not drift inward. It hesitated. Data poured in from every array, every probe, every ancient sensor humanity had quietly seeded across the void. The entity's energy profile fluctuated, patterns breaking down, reforming, weakening. What's happening? Someone whispered. Corthan turned to the human relay standing at the edge of the room. The man had been silent throughout the entire session, eyes fixed on data only he could fully read. We're starving it, the relay said. By choosing restraint, the trade matron asked, disbelief in her voice. Yes, the relay replied. It feeds on collapse, not conflict. On the energy released when systems fail, when civilizations burn themselves apart chasing growth they can't sustain. The dark shape recoiled slightly, not in fear, but confusion. For the first time in its existence, the pattern was breaking. Across the galaxy, the changes were immediate and uncomfortable. Shipyards shut down entire production lines. Not repurposed, shut down. Fleets stood down permanently, their crews reassigned to reconstruction, exploration without conquest, deep space monitoring. Empires became networks. Rivals became neighbors. Power became responsibility. Not everyone accepted it. A handful of rogue factions rejected the accords, clinging to old doctrines. They armed themselves in secret, dreaming of carving new dominions from the chaos. Humanity noticed. They did not intervene immediately. They waited. When the first rogue fleet attempted an unauthorized expansion into a neutral system, space folded gently around them. Not violently, not destructively. The ships simply stopped. Human vessels appeared, not warships, not armadas. Observers, custodians, silent witnesses. A message was transmitted. Simple, calm. This path is closed. The rogue commanders tried to fire. Their weapons powered down. They tried to flee. Space refused them. They surrendered without a shot fired. The message spread faster than any broadcast. There would be no more warnings. Years passed again. This time, something truly new took shape. Not an empire. A balance. Civilizations began exploring inward instead of outward, advancing science, culture, understanding. Not because humanity demanded it, but because the alternative had been revealed too clearly to ignore. The dark shape continued to fade, its movements slowing, its presence weakening. It did not die. It diminished. Enough. On Earth, life went on much as it always had. Humanity never announced victory, never claimed credit. Most humans never even knew how close the galaxy had come to ending. They did not need to. The custodian stood alone in a quiet chamber beneath Earth's surface, watching the final models settle into stable patterns. Probability curves flattened. Extinction events dropped to near-zero projections. Outcome achieved, an aide said softly. For now, the custodian replied. The aide hesitated. They did it, without us leading them. Yes, she said. That was always the goal. She looked up at an image of the galaxy. Calmer now, less frantic, its edges no longer bleeding energy into the dark. Will they remember? The aide asked. The custodian allowed herself a small, tired smile. No, she said. They'll forget. Eventually. And when will they do? She turned back to the stars. Then the trap will still be there. Far beyond the rim, the dark shape drifted into stillness, no longer drawn forward by the hunger it once fed on. It would remain, dormant, waiting for imbalance to return. A reminder written into the structure of the universe itself. Back on Earth, the planet turned quietly beneath the stars, blue and unassuming. No monuments marked what it had done. No banners declared its role. And yet, across the galaxy, a single truth endured, spoken softly now, without fear. Don't go to Earth. Not because it was a trap, but because it was the place where the galaxy learned to stop destroying itself. And humanity, once underestimated, once forgotten, returned to the shadows. Not as rulers, not